In the dead of a Montana blizzard, headlights slice through the whiteout, just as a wounded bobcat kitten, cornered by coyotes, collapses in the road. Anna hits the brakes, her old fears screaming to stay away. But instead, she dives into the storm, risking everything for a wild, desperate stranger. What she discovers that night is bigger than survival. It's a lesson in letting go, in hope, and in the healing that only comes when you reach out. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. If you believe true courage means loving without guarantees, hit like and subscribe for more stories where hope and healing run free. There are nights in Montana when the world feels like it's being erased, when snow swallows the moonlight, and the air stings with a kind of loneliness that seeps all the way to your bones. That was the night Anna Reynolds, 54, drove her battered green Tacoma up the winding road known as Eagle Pass. The old truck's heater groaned against the cold, but Anna barely noticed, eyes straining through a swirling white curtain that seemed determined to sweep the whole mountain clean. She'd been up here 100 times before, but tonight every turn was a fresh risk. Snow flickered in the headlights, piling up on the windshield faster than the wipers could clear. Anna's hands, gloved but still trembling, gripped the wheel tighter with every icy curve. Out here, you learn to respect the wild, its power to shape, to shatter, to save. Anna muttered to herself, her voice the only human sound for miles. The isolation pressed in, a familiar ache since she'd lost her son years ago. Montana winters had a way of bringing ghosts close to the surface. Suddenly, movement, a flash of tawny fur, low and frantic, darting across the road. Anna slammed the brakes. The Tacoma fishtailed, skidding sideways. Time stretched, fractured by the shriek of rubber and the grinding protest of metal on ice. For one gut-wrenching second, Anna thought she'd plow straight into the embankment. But the truck slid to a stop, heart hammering. Silence, except for her rasping breath and the ticking of the engine. Anna fumbled with the door, boots crunching into thigh-deep snow as she stumbled out, flashlight in hand. The wind cut through her layers. In the spinning beam, she saw it. A small bobcat kitten, maybe 3 or 4 months old, half buried in a drift, eyes wide with terror. Blood spattered the snow beneath its tiny paws, its tail flicked in panic. Before Anna could move, a haunting chorus echoed from the darkness. Coyotes. Shadows flickered beyond the road's edge, 3, maybe 4, slinking shapes with hungry eyes. The lead coyote bared its teeth, emboldened by the storm. Anna's breath plumed in the cold. She crouched, heart pounding, calling softly. "Hey there, little one, it's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." But the bobcat, Orion, she'd later call him, spat and tried to scramble deeper into the snow, each movement weaker than the last. A snarl. The coyotes edged closer, their bodies tense with anticipation. Anna grabbed her flashlight and hurled it at the nearest shape. The coyote yelped, darting back, but regrouped with its pack. Anna's mind raced. If she didn't do something now, Orion wouldn't last another minute. Desperation took over. Anna lunged forward, shrugging off her parka and wrapping it around the kitten. Sharp claws raked her wrist, drawing blood that mingled hot and bright with Orion's. She winced, but didn't let go. With one arm, Anna scooped up the struggling bobcat. With the other, she grabbed a snow-brushed branch and swung it at the coyotes. They circled, yipping, eyes fixed on the prize. Anna shouted, voice hoarse and wild, the sound echoing off the cliffs. For a moment, predator and human stared each other down. Then, As if some ancient truce had been called, the pack melted back into the shadows, their hunger unsatisfied. Anna staggered to her feet. Orion clutched against her chest. Her breath came in ragged bursts as she hurried back to the truck, fumbling with frozen fingers to open the door. Inside, she laid the kitten on the passenger seat, cranking the heater to full blast. Blood, hers and Orion's, spattered the seat, a messy testament to the night's cost. As the truck rattled back onto the road, Anna's mind spun. What now? Her cabin was miles away, medical help even farther. She glanced at Orion, who lay shivering, sides heaving, eyes glazed with pain and exhaustion. In that moment, Anna wasn't just rescuing a wounded animal. She was fighting for something she couldn't name, a chance to heal a piece of herself long thought lost to the blizzard inside. The road ahead was treacherous, but Anna drove on, headlights barely cutting through the whiteout, refusing to surrender to fear or the ghosts that nipped at her heels. The night pressed in, fierce and unyielding, but Anna held on to the one warm, fragile life beside her, whispering promises to a bobcat and to herself, promises that, this time, she wouldn't let go. The drive home was a blur, a desperate race against the storm and time itself. Anna's knuckles ached from gripping the wheel. Snow hammered the windshield so hard, it felt like the world was ending. In the flicker of the cabin's porch light, Anna pulled up, tires slipping and engine sputtering, the truck finally shuddering to a stop. She rushed around to the passenger side, scooping Orion, now limp and frighteningly cold, into her arms. For a second, Anna hesitated. Was it too late? Had she risked everything just to cradle death in her arms again? She shook her head. No. And barreled through the snow, kicking open the cabin door with her boot. Inside, the place was dark and cluttered. Wood stove cold, boots piled by the wall, field guides and animal bones stacked on shelves. Anna dumped her soaked gloves, turned the stove up high, and gently laid Orion on a threadbare towel by the fire. Her own blood streaked across her arm and shirt. She barely noticed, every nerve tuned to the small, spotted body in front of her. Orion's breaths were shallow. His fur was clumped with ice and blood. Anna's hands trembled as she pawed through the first aid kit. She'd patched up deer, stray dogs, even a fox once, but a wild bobcat was something else. A line no state regulation wanted her to cross. Her phone buzzed. The signal flickered. A text from Ranger Jackson. Blizzard's bad. Roads closed. Stay put. Anna tossed the phone aside. She worked by instinct. Warm towels, a heating pad, drops of sugar water on Orion's tongue. He barely twitched. Anna checked for broken bones, cleaned his paws with saline, wincing every time he whimpered. She tried to wrap his wounds, but his claws shot out, scraping her wrist raw. "Easy, Tiger," she muttered, not caring that her own pain was growing. Minutes blurred into hours. Anna's hands moved on autopilot, Google searches for Bobcat kitten hypothermia, frantic texts to the local vet, no reply. Then back to tending Orion. She whispered to him, telling stories of mountain winters and wild places, hoping her voice would keep him tethered to the world. Outside, the blizzard howled, rattling the cabin's old windows. Anna's anxiety coiled tighter. She remembered the ranger's warning. If the bobcat didn't recover, she'd have to surrender him to the state. Her mind filled with images of metal cages, sterile lights, euthanasia, Orion's wild spirit extinguished by rules meant to protect, but sometimes only punished. Anna's own scars ached, reminders of the son she'd lost years ago, the hospital rooms, the helpless waiting. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to focus on the present. on the living heartbeat beneath her hands. Hours dragged by. Midnight. Then 1, 2 a.m. Anna fought sleep, drifting only to snap awake every time Orion shivered or whimpered. She boiled water, filled hot water bottles, kept rotating towels, anything to keep the chill at bay. When she thought he might slip away, she lifted him gently and cradled him against her chest, his heart fluttering against hers, weak but stubborn. Near dawn, there was a knock, sharp, urgent. Anna's pulse jumped. She opened the door a crack to see 2 wildlife officers, faces pinched and windburned. "Ma'am, we got a report of someone picking up a bobcat on the pass," one said. "That true?" Anna stood her ground, voice steady. "He wouldn't have survived the coyotes. I'm trying to stabilize him." The officers looked at each other. "If he's not healthy enough, we'll have to take him in. It's protocol." Anna bristled, ready to argue, but they softened. "We know you're good with animals, Ms. Reynolds, but the state's strict. If he's too tame, he can't go back to the wild." She nodded, throat tight. "Give me until sunrise, please." They hesitated, then nodded. "One night. We'll check in at dawn." Anna shut the door, heart pounding, fear and anger warring in her chest. She knelt beside Orion, tears stinging her eyes. "Come on, buddy. I need you to fight. Just 1 more hour." She did everything she could. Warmed milk, a drop of honey, soft singing, songs from her childhood, half-remembered lullabies, anything that might comfort the wild thing clinging to life. Each minute stretched endlessly. She promised him, "If you make it, I'll never let you down." Then, as the first gray light crept through the frost-ringed window, Anna felt it, a steady, slow, rhythmic breath against her palm. Orion's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, the world stood still. He blinked up at her, dazed but alive, a spark of wildness returning to his gaze. Anna let out a shaky breath she'd been holding all night. Relief flooded her so hard, she almost collapsed. She stroked Orion's head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You did it. You're still here. We both are." At sunrise, the officers returned. Anna showed them Orion, curled on the towel, breathing deep and steady. One officer whistled low. "Looks like you bought him another day." Anna nodded, her voice stronger now. "We're not giving up. Not today." As the storm faded and gold light poured through the windows, Anna realized this was the first real victory she'd felt in years. Orion, wounded, wild, and still fiercely alive, had pulled her back into the world. But she knew the real fight was just beginning. After the storm, time seemed to shift inside Anna's cabin. The frantic pace of rescue gave way to a slow, uncertain waiting, days measured not by clocks or calendars, but by the quiet rhythm of care. Outside, the Montana winter deepened. The world was muffled in white. Forests hunched under thick snow. The only sounds a distant wind or the creak of pines. Anna's cabin, half buried in drifts, became a world unto itself, the boundary between wilderness and fragile sanctuary. Each morning, Anna's first thought was for Orion. She'd wake before dawn, heart stuttering until she heard the kitten's faint mewl or spotted his golden eyes glinting in the half-dark. Most days, she'd find him nestled in the towel by the fire, ribs still showing, fur patchy but eyes alert, always watching, wary as a ghost. Anna kept meticulous notes in her battered leather journal. Orion's temperature, appetite, every change in his limp or the way he flinched at sudden movement. Her handwriting, already neat from years of fieldwork, grew sharper, almost obsessive, as if precision might ward off the chaos of loss. Outside, the blizzard's aftermath lingered. Anna split wood in the yard, the axe thudding rhythmically as she worked out her worries. She hiked through snow to check the animal tracks crisscrossing her property, careful to keep Orion's presence a secret from prying neighbors. At night, she'd sit by the window, breath fogging the glass, watching snow fall in soft, relentless curtains. The loneliness felt different now, still sharp, but softened by the sense of purpose Orion had brought. Orion's progress was slow, with setbacks that kept Anna's nerves taut. Some days he refused food, retreating to the darkest corner behind the stove. Other mornings, he would stagger to his feet, startled by his own shadow, only to collapse in frustration. Anna did her best to stay calm, speaking in low tones, resisting the urge to scoop him up every time he cried. She knew wild animals, even young ones, needed their boundaries. If she coddled Orion too much, she might ruin any chance of him surviving on his own. Still, the lines between wildness and care grew blurry. Anna couldn't help herself. She talked to Orion constantly, narrating her days like he was an old friend. She told him about her late son, about the mountain passes, about the animals she'd seen and the ones she'd lost. Sometimes she'd laugh at Orion's clumsy leaps, or the way he pounced on her shoelaces, startling herself with the sound. Sometimes, when she thought he was sleeping, Anna would let herself cry, the memories rushing up with the night wind. Winter pressed on. Weeks passed. Orion grew stronger, his fur filling out, muscles rippling beneath the tawny coat. He learned to stalk the old cat toy Anna had tied to a string, ears flat and tail flicking as he pounced, eyes wild with focus. Anna's heart soared at every sign of progress, but fear always shadowed her hope. Each victory brought new anxieties. Was Orion becoming too attached? Would he ever be wild enough again? Would the state show up and declare her efforts a failure? Anna read everything she could: wildlife manuals, research articles, even obscure blogs by animal rehabbers half a world away. She joined online forums under a false name, asking questions late into the night. How to keep bobcat instincts strong in captivity? When is the right time to start wild training? The advice was conflicting, but Anna absorbed it all, adapting whatever worked. She built a small pen in the yard, filling it with logs, leaves, even frozen rabbits from the market to encourage hunting. Orion eyed the outdoor run warily, venturing out in brief, skittish bursts before bolting back to the safety of the cabin. But with each passing day, something else changed. Inside Anna. The ache she'd carried since losing her son softened, replaced by a new kind of ache. The pain of hope, of wanting, of fearing failure but daring to try anyway. Caring for Orion became a ritual of healing, a chance to rewrite her story as much as his. She started journaling more honestly, admitting her grief, her fears, even her moments of joy. The act of writing felt dangerous, like stepping onto a frozen lake, but necessary. She saw herself reflected in Orion's wild eyes, both scarred, both survivors, both learning what it meant to trust again. At the end of each day, Anna would sit with Orion curled nearby, the fire casting long shadows on the walls. She'd read her notes aloud, charting progress and setbacks. Sometimes Orion would lift his head, as if listening, his ears flicking at the sound of her voice. Anna found comfort in the routine, even as she steeled herself for the inevitable visit from wildlife officials. Regulations were clear. If Orion became too tame, he'd never go back to the wild. She'd lose him to bureaucracy, to a system that sometimes valued rules over life. The cabin became a place of delicate balance, wildness and safety, love and distance, hope and resignation. Winter raged outside, but inside, Anna and Orion weathered their private storms. With every day that Orion survived, Anna felt her own pulse grow steadier. She was saving him, yes, but he was saving her too, in ways she couldn't yet name. One night, as the snow fell harder and the wind howled against the door, Anna wrote a promise in her journal. For as long as he's here, I'll fight for him. For as long as I can, I'll fight for myself, too. Orion blinked at her, wild and beautiful and impossibly alive, and Anna knew they would face whatever came, together. By late January, the Montana landscape had settled into a deep, relentless silence. Each morning began with Anna shoveling a path to the woodpile, breath hanging in the brittle air, mind never far from the Bobcat kitten who now claimed her heart as much as her living room. Orion's recovery was no longer miraculous. It was routine. He'd grown from a trembling bundle of fur into a restless presence, paws too large for his body, eyes forever scanning for escape, wildness flickering beneath each movement. Anna knew that the time for coddling had passed. Every wildlife manual and online forum hammered the same warning. If Orion became too familiar, too dependent, she would have doomed his chances for freedom. Yet it was a lesson easier read than lived. Their routines had become entwined, each day orbiting around mealtimes, wound care, and the slow dance of trust and retreat. It was in this restless quiet that Anna invented what she called training hugs. She'd read about techniques to minimize human imprinting on wild animals, but there was little written for the emotional tug-of-war she faced. So she tried her own method, donning a bulky, padded jacket, an old thing left over from her ex-husband, and gently gathering Orion up, keeping her face hidden, her touch as neutral as possible. The first time, Orion lashed out, claws catching the thick sleeve, body twisting in panic. Anna didn't flinch. She let him struggle, then released him, marking the boundaries without anger or affection. She repeated the exercise each day, tracking Orion's reactions in her journal. Some days he barely tolerated her. Others he fought so fiercely Anna left with scratches and bruises. Yet each time, she saw a flicker of understanding in his gaze. He was learning what was safe, what was not, where the wild world began and ended. The training hugs became something else, too. In those moments, jacket zipped, arms shielded, heart pounding, Anna felt the old wounds inside her pulse with new life. She'd spent years fortifying herself against grief, building emotional armor as thick as that jacket. Yet, as she worked with Orion, she realized how desperately she needed connection, even the difficult, thorny kind. Sometimes she'd laugh at herself, the absurdity of it all. A grown woman in a patched coat, wrestling a half-grown bobcat in her living room while the world outside slept under a million stars. But the work paid off. Orion became more confident, less fearful. He started to test his boundaries, racing from one end of the cabin to the other, darting out to the pen Anna had built, practicing his leaps and ambushes on whatever she left for him. His movements grew more graceful, more deliberate, and Anna's heart swelled with pride every time he succeeded. The hardest part, Anna soon realized, was not the physical challenge but the emotional one. She knew this phase would end. The state's regulations were clear. A wildlife officer would soon visit, checking both Orion's progress and Anna's compliance with the rules. If she failed, Orion would be taken away, at best to a sanctuary, at worst to an uncertain fate. The anxiety gnawed at her, an old, familiar ache. Then, one gray afternoon, the letter arrived. An official envelope slipped into her mailbox by a neighbor passing through on a snowmobile. Anna stood by the window, fingers trembling as she read the message. A state inspection, scheduled for the following week. To ensure compliance with rehabilitation protocol, it read, in the flat, impersonal language of bureaucracy. Anna felt her chest tighten. She sat at her kitchen table, the letter heavy in her hands. She stared out the window, watching Orion stalk a length of knotted rope in the yard, every muscle taut, every move wild and free. The thought of losing him, after all this effort and hope, twisted something deep inside her. But Anna was not one to surrender easily. That evening, she set about making the outdoor run more complex, hauling branches and logs into place, burying treats and toys in the snow to encourage Orion's hunting instincts. She mapped out a plan for the inspection, cleaned up the cabin, organized her notes, rehearsed answers to possible questions. If she had to fight for Orion's future, she would be ready. Inside, she kept up their training, less handling, more independence. Anna forced herself to watch from a distance as Orion stalked imaginary prey, his confidence blooming with each new challenge. Still, when night fell, Anna found herself standing at the window, looking out at the stars, wondering what more she could do. One night, as Orion slept curled by the fire, Anna sat with her journal, the pages crammed with observations, fears, and fragile hopes. She wrote, "Maybe the lesson isn't just about keeping him wild. It's about letting go, about trusting that what I've done will be enough." The truth was both liberating and terrifying. The week passed in a blur. Anna worked harder than ever, juggling the needs of the wild and the demands of the state. When the inspection day finally came, the morning was bright and brutally cold. Anna woke early, nerves humming, preparing herself and Orion for whatever lay ahead. As the sun rose, Anna took one last look at the bobcat she'd fought so hard to save. Wildness burned in his eyes, untamable, defiant, alive. Anna felt the ache of love and fear entwined, and realized that her journey with Orion was about more than rescue. It was about surrender, courage, and faith, not just in the animal before her, but in herself. Whatever happened next, Anna knew she had already crossed the line between healing another and healing herself. The wild had taught her a new language, one of risk, acceptance, and the beautiful, brutal gift of letting go. The day of the inspection dawned with a sharp blue sky, the kind that made the snow glare like polished glass. Anna had barely slept. She checked and rechecked the outdoor run, rehearsed her words, even brushed the dried blood from the sleeve of her padded jacket. Orion was awake early too, pacing the pen, tail flicking, nose pressed against the wire mesh as if he sensed the shift in energy. When the wildlife officers arrived, 2 men and a woman, all in state-issued parkas, boots caked with ice, they took in the cabin, the improvised enclosures, and the logbooks Anna had prepared. She answered their questions with calm authority, showing her records of Orion's weight, his diet, every sign of progress and wildness. She braced herself for criticism, but was surprised to hear one officer, Samson, gruff but kind-eyed, murmur, "You're doing more than most would, Ms. Reynolds." It almost felt like a victory, but Anna could sense an undercurrent of doubt. "He's young," said the woman, Officer Hall. "But if he gets used to you, he'll lose his edge. You know the protocol. He needs to pass the wildness test before transfer." Anna nodded. "I understand. I've kept him at arm's length as much as possible, The training hugs, the outdoor run, the enrichment toys. He's not a pet. I know what's at stake. Still, the tension never left. As the officers observed Orion, Anna's stomach clenched. He stalked away from them, hid under a log, let out a guttural hiss. Good, she thought. Let them see his wild side. But then, in an unguarded moment, Orion leaped up and batted playfully at the zipper on Anna's coat when she approached, an act that looked far too affectionate. Officer Hall's eyebrow arched. Anna felt heat rise in her cheeks. He's still learning boundaries, she said quickly. It's not always easy. The inspection ended with more warnings than praise. He's coming along, but you have to accelerate his wild training. No more coddling. We'll check back in 2 weeks. If he doesn't show improvement, we'll have to move him to the sanctuary early. The words stung, but Anna set her jaw. I hear you. I want him ready for the wild as much as anyone. The officers left, their truck crunching away down the snowy road, and Anna slumped against the door in exhaustion. She stared at Orion, who stared right back, green eyes unblinking, as if daring her to give up. She almost laughed. You're tougher than you look, little guy. But Anna's day was just beginning. That afternoon, a knock sounded, a rare occurrence on her remote road. She opened the door to find her neighbor, Denny, a genial man with a love of gadgets and social media. He was grinning, holding his phone. Anna, you're famous, he said. He showed her a video he'd taken through her fence days ago. Anna, bundled in her comical jacket, wrestling with Orion in the snow, the bobcat leaping, Anna laughing and dodging claws. Denny had posted it online. It went viral, he said, eyes wide. People are calling you the Bobcat Whisperer. You're on TikTok, Instagram. Someone even tagged a national wildlife group. Anna was horrified. You can't. Denny, you shouldn't. But it was too late. The video had tens of thousands of views, comments pouring in. She's a hero. Is that legal? That cat belongs in the wild, not her living room. I wish I could hug a bobcat, support and criticism tangled together in an endless scroll. The flood of attention changed everything overnight. Reporters called, asking for interviews. Wildlife enthusiasts and animal rights activists filled Anna's inbox with praise, questions, even threats. Local schoolchildren drew pictures of Orion and left them in her mailbox. Strangers offered donations, advice, and occasionally veiled accusations. Anna was overwhelmed, but something unexpected happened. Instead of hiding, she leaned in, using the opportunity to educate. She posted a careful video explaining Orion's situation, emphasizing that he was not a pet, that every day was about giving him the best chance for a wild life. She showed his training setup, talked about the importance of respecting wildness, and asked people not to romanticize what they saw. He's not here to entertain, she said, her voice steady. He's here to heal, and so am I. We're both trying to get back where we belong. The reaction was immediate, and mostly positive. Parents from the town's small school asked if Anna would talk to their kids about wildlife rescue. A retired biologist, Leah Mason, stopped by with wild game and advice about rewilding. He'll need to learn to hunt real prey, Leah said, and you'll need to learn to let him go. The community's involvement was a lifeline. Kids left Orion toys made from pine cones and twine. Old friends Anna hadn't seen in years dropped off firewood, groceries, even medical supplies. The phone rang less with threats and more with encouragement. Anna felt buoyed by the kindness, even as she dreaded the next visit from the state. But support brought scrutiny. Wildlife officials now watched Anna's every move, checking her posts, making unannounced visits. Leah Mason returned, this time with stricter advice. "You've done wonders," Leah said gently, "but you need to step back even more. If he becomes too used to you, he won't survive in the wild. Let the wildness lead now." That night, Anna lay awake, listening to the wind howl outside. She realized her role had changed. No longer just rescuer, but also teacher, advocate, and above all, guardian of Orion's wildness. It wasn't enough to save him. She had to make sure he could thrive on his own. Anna watched Orion as he slept, paws twitching in dreams of snow and sky. She whispered, "The world's watching now, but you and I, we know what's real. Tomorrow we train harder. Tomorrow we trust the wild." The battle wasn't just with the state or the storms. It was with her own heart, a daily lesson in loving fiercely and letting go. With the world watching and the officials' warnings ringing in her ears, Anna woke each morning to a new kind of urgency. The quiet, slow rhythm of winter had given way to a regimen of wild training. Her days divided by tasks that tested both her creativity and her resolve. If Orion was to have a future beyond fences and regulations, Anna had to teach him not just to survive, but to thrive in a world that had nearly killed him. She couldn't do it alone. Leah Mason, the retired biologist with a deep, pragmatic kindness, became a near daily presence at the cabin. Sometimes she arrived before sunrise, bundled in wool, her truck bed full of frozen game and field gear. With Leah came Jackson, a retired ranger and friend of Anna's late husband, whose quiet strength brought a sense of order to their frantic efforts. Together, the three built on what Anna had started, transforming the simple outdoor pen into a training ground. They strung up chicken carcasses and rabbit pelts, buried bones beneath the snow, and fashioned makeshift dens from old stumps and brush. Leah insisted on minimal human contact. "If you want him wild, you have to be invisible," she said, her tone gentle but firm. Anna forced herself to let go, watching from a distance as Orion stalked his prey, pouncing with growing skill and confidence. His leaps became longer, his patience sharper. Sometimes he'd vanish for hours into the brush pile, reappearing with snow-flecked whiskers and an untamed gleam in his eye. Anna's heart swelled with pride and an aching sadness every time Orion ignored her call or bristled when she approached. This, she reminded herself, was the goal: to become a memory, not a lifeline. The training grew more demanding as the days ticked by. Jackson brought in live rodents, setting them loose in the pen to give Orion a taste of real hunting. Anna watched with her breath held tight, flinching every time the bobcat hesitated or pounced too eagerly. The first time Orion caught a mouse, he didn't know what to do, batting it back and forth, confused. But by the end of the week, the clumsy kitten was gone, replaced by a predator, lean and lithe, whose instincts had finally begun to surface. The changes weren't only in Orion. Anna found herself shifting too. She stopped speaking to him, even when her heart ached to comfort him after a rough hunt or a failed leap. She stopped sleeping with the bedroom door open, making it clear the cabin was no longer his refuge. Some nights, Anna lay awake, haunted by dreams of losing Orion, not to death, but to a wildness she could never truly join. She wrote in her journal, "Love is learning when to step back. Sometimes the bravest thing is not to help." The state officials returned, unannounced, as promised. They watched as Orion darted through the run, ears pinned, hackles raised, refusing to come near Anna or Leah. The lead officer, Samson, scribbled notes and nodded, his skepticism softening into a grudging respect. "He's improving," he said. "Still, He needs more distance, more fear. Anna argued for time, just a little more, a few extra days to finish what they'd started. She was met with crossed arms and bureaucratic detachment. Leah stepped in, vouching for Anna's methods and pleading her case with the force of experience and science. In the end, the officials relented. "You have 2 more weeks," Sampson said. "But then he goes. That's final." The pressure was suffocating. Every moment felt critical, every slip a potential death sentence for Orion's future. Anna became hyper-aware of her presence, moving silently, keeping her distance even when Orion's cry cut through the night. Sometimes he watched her from the shadows, eyes shining, as if wondering why the warmth and comfort had been replaced by cold indifference. Anna blinked away tears, whispering to herself, "You're not doing this for him. You're doing it for the wild. You're doing it for all the pieces of yourself you never let heal." Despite the tension, there were small triumphs. One dawn, Anna watched through the frosted window as Orion dragged a rabbit carcass up a log, jaws clenched, fur bristling with pride. He ripped into the meat, muscles tense, tail twitching, every inch a wild animal. Jackson let out a low whistle. He's got the heart. Now he just needs the chance. But the process was brutal, and not every day ended in victory. Orion sometimes lashed out at nothing, frustrated and restless, pacing the enclosure until his paws bled. Anna patched him up, always careful, always distant. Leah reassured her. "He needs the struggle. Don't take it away. If you want him to survive, he has to earn it." The townspeople followed the journey online, rooting for Orion, sending messages of hope or worry. The story spread further, reaching wildlife advocates and skeptics across the state. Some cheered Anna's efforts. Others accused her of meddling, of playing God with wild lives. Anna read every message but let none of them dictate her choices. Her only guide was Orion, and the wildness she saw kindling brighter each day. On the last evening before the final inspection, Anna stood at the edge of the run, watching Orion pace under the pale rising moon. She whispered, "I love you enough to let you go." The words hurt more than she expected. Inside, she wrote one last note in her journal. "If he fails, I will grieve. If he succeeds, I will grieve too. But that's the work. That's the gift." Anna closed the journal, heart pounding as the wind rattled the cabin and wildness whispered at the edge of the world. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning. But tonight, Anna stood between what was safe and what was necessary, loving the wild with open hands, and waiting to see if love, this time, could truly set something free. The last night before the final inspection arrived with an uneasy stillness, the kind that made Anna's nerves buzz and her mind pace as restlessly as Orion. She double-checked the locks and wiring on the outdoor run, tested the gate twice, then a third time, feeling the press of every decision she'd made since the blizzard. Orion was a shadow in the corner, watching her through the mesh, a wary tension in every movement. Anna whispered, not daring to hope, "Just one more night, buddy. One more night to prove you're ready." The wind picked up as darkness fell, cold and sharp, rattling the eaves of the cabin. Snow blew sideways, turning the yard into a shifting sea of white. Anna lay awake on the couch, listening to every creak and whistle, eyes trained on the small monitor showing Orion's enclosure. Sleep never came, just a gray, half-conscious state full of worry and what-ifs. Sometime past midnight, the wind shrieked, and Anna heard it, the metallic clang of the run's side gate. She bolted upright, heart lurching. The camera flickered, blank, then returned, an empty pen. Anna threw on her boots and jacket and plunged outside, breath burning, flashlight slicing the storm. The side gate swung open on a broken hinge, snow packed in the corners, Orion's tracks fresh and chaotic in the drifts. She yelled his name into the storm, knowing it was useless. The world had become a maze of sound and movement, the Bobcat already gone. For one wild, helpless minute, Anna stood frozen, the weight of failure crushing her chest. After all this, is this how I lose him? She forced herself to move, grabbing the radio and dialing Jackson and Leah. Her voice shook, but she was focused, issuing orders. He's loose, heading north, last seen near the ridge. They coordinated, Jackson and Leah promising to bring tracking gear and meet at the ranger station at dawn. Anna scrawled a hasty note for any officials who might show up early, then grabbed her pack, emergency food, and a thermal blanket. She set out alone into the blizzard, following the faint, wavering prints that were already filling with snow. The mountains felt endless and hostile that night. Every step was a struggle, her thighs burning as she trudged up the ridge, flashlight beam flickering over broken branches and tiny paw prints. She called out softly every so often, hoping for a glimpse, a flash of eyeshine, a faint yowl, but the storm's smothered sound, erased scent, made the world as big and merciless as her fear. For hours, Anna pushed herself forward, the snow soaking through her jeans, hands numb even in thick gloves. Dawn was a gray rumor on the horizon by the time Anna stumbled into a small, sheltered hollow beneath the trees. She collapsed to her knees, exhausted, and wiped ice from her face. There, finally, she saw something. Small tracks, a scatter of blood, and a faint shape moving in the underbrush. For a heartbeat, hope surged. "Orion!" she called, as gentle as she could manage. But the Bobcat kept its distance, slipping deeper into the thicket, barely recognizable as the animal who'd once curled by her fire. Anna didn't follow. She sat, shivering, and let him disappear. The lesson was sharp and immediate. Wildness wasn't something you could command. It was a force, older and stronger than love or regret. Jackson and Leah found Anna at mid-morning, their expressions tight with worry and relief. They made camp by the ranger station, working in shifts to track Orion. They set up trail cameras, left food at likely resting spots, and checked prints along the creeks and old game trails. Anna insisted on helping, refusing to be sidelined by exhaustion or shame. Days passed in a blur. Each sunrise brought new hope. Maybe today they'd find him. Maybe today he'd return. Each night, Anna lay awake, mind crowded with memories. Orion's first breath, his first clumsy leap, the feeling of his heartbeat against her palm. She tortured herself with possibilities. Was he wounded, starving, lost forever in the endless woods? Or was he thriving, finally free, as she'd always wanted? On the third day, one of the trail cams caught him. Orion, thinner but alert, slinking along a frozen creek not far from the ranger station. The image brought Anna to tears. He was alive, wild, surviving on his own. That afternoon, officers from the state arrived for the inspection. Anna faced them with dark circles under her eyes, heart thudding in dread. "He escaped during the storm," she said, voice raw but unflinching. "We've tracked him. He's alive. He's avoiding humans. He's hunting." The lead officer scrolled through the trail cam photos, then looked at Anna with an unreadable expression. "You said you wanted to prove he's ready," he said. "You may have done just that. If he's surviving, if he's staying clear of people and shelter, then he's passed the test most rehabbers never risk." Anna's relief was sharp and bright, but so was the ache. She knew what came next. Final transfer to the sanctuary, if they could capture him. Leah and Jackson helped set up a humane trap, baited with scent and food. It took another night, but Orion, driven by hunger and habit, wandered in and was caught without injury. Anna knelt by the trap as dawn broke, watching Orion glare and spit, wild and unbowed. She whispered, voice thick with tears and pride, "You made it, little warrior. You did everything I ever hoped for, and more." The officers confirmed. Orion would be transferred to Bozeman Wildlife Center, not as a captive, but as an ambassador. Proof that wildness could be rekindled, that rescue could lead to freedom, not just survival. Anna walked back to her cabin alone, heart hollow and full at once. Orion was gone, but in his place was something new. Faith, hard-won and trembling in the power of letting go. The morning of Orion's transfer dawned bright and cold, sunlight flashing on fresh snow and the road to Bozeman shining like a ribbon of possibility through the pine. Anna drove behind the sanctuary truck, her own truck bed empty for the first time in months, hands white-knuckled on the wheel. She glanced in the mirror at the crate holding Orion. He crouched, tense and alert, ears flattened and tail flicking, eyes a hard, unyielding gold. Even now, knowing the road ahead would lead him to a new kind of captivity, he refused to surrender. The Bozeman Wildlife Center was alive with movement when they arrived. Volunteers carried boxes of food and bedding, children's artwork decorated the lobby, and news vans clustered by the front gate. As the sanctuary team carefully lifted Orion's crate, Anna stood back, her heart a battlefield of pride and grief. Leah Mason came to her side, squeezing Anna's shoulder. "You gave him a fighting chance, Anna. Not many would have lasted this far." Anna nodded, swallowing hard. "He gave it to himself, too. He never let me forget he was wild." Inside the center, Orion was settled into a massive natural enclosure. Logs, boulders, brush, and trees, all enclosed by a fence so cleverly hidden that, for a moment, it almost seemed like open forest. Anna watched from a distance as the staff opened the crate. Orion exploded out, streaking across the ground and launching himself up the nearest pine. He clung to a branch, eyes scanning the crowd, then let loose a sharp yowl that echoed through the center. The crowd gasped, stepping back, but the director, a silver-haired woman named Dr. Gomez, only smiled. "That's what we like to see," she said. "That's the sound of a survivor." It didn't take long for word of Orion's arrival to spread. The hugging Bobcat of Eagle Pass became a local sensation. School groups visited to see him, filing past the enclosure while educators, sometimes Anna herself, told the story of his rescue and wild training. Anna always made sure the real message came through. Orion's not a pet. He's a wild creature who got a second chance. He's here to teach us respect, not to be tamed or owned. At first, Anna worried that all the attention would wear Orion down or make him agitated and fearful, but the staff handled it with care, limiting exposure and letting Orion decide when to show himself. Most days he vanished into the brush, emerging only when he wanted, haunting the trees like a ghost. And on the rare mornings when he came down to the fence, staring out at the clusters of kids, Anna saw awe and wonder on their faces. One little girl pressed her hand to the glass and whispered, "He looks like he's dreaming." Anna smiled, thinking, maybe he is. Soon after, the media picked up the story for local and regional news. Anna was invited to speak at the center's weekend programs, sharing not just Orion's journey, but her own lessons about loss, healing, and what it really means to honor wildness. She stood before crowds, families, teachers, other wildlife lovers, and told the unvarnished truth. "Rescue isn't about making yourself the hero," she said. "It's about doing the hard work to help another being become what they're meant to be, even if it means you have to say goodbye." The impact rippled through Bozeman. People stopped Anna on the street, sometimes just to say thank you, sometimes with questions about wildlife or how to help. Local teachers began integrating more lessons about native animals and conservation. The city council, inspired by Orion's story, passed new measures to support local wildlife corridors and reduce traffic through migration routes. Anna's own life changed too. Where once her cabin had been a place of solitary grief, it now became a meeting ground for neighbors, students, and scientists. She held open days for kids to learn about tracking, animal care, and Montana's wild places. Parents dropped off baked goods and old blankets. Friends stopped by with news and laughter. The transformation in Anna ran deeper still. For years, her world had been narrowed by loss and routine. Her son's memory haunting every room, her life echoing with old regrets. Now, she found herself stepping forward, letting her voice join the chorus. She started a blog about wildlife rescue, fielding questions from people as far away as Vermont and Oregon. She worked with Leah and Dr. Gomez to train other volunteers, sharing both her successes and her stumbles. At each step, Anna felt herself letting go, of fear, of shame, of the urge to hold on so tightly that she strangled what she loved. Orion, meanwhile, thrived in his new role. He became the center's ambassador to the wild, a living testament to the power of a second chance. Children wrote thank you notes and drew pictures of him leaping through trees. Anna pinned their notes above her desk, each one a small light against the memory of the storm. On spring's first warm day, Anna watched a class gather beneath Orion's enclosure. Dr. Gomez spoke about wildness and respect, and Anna caught Orion gazing down from his branch, eyes half closed, basking in sun and wind. She felt the ache of goodbye, but also a strange joy, a sense that something broken inside her had been mended, not by erasing the past, but by sharing its lessons with the world. That evening, Anna sat by her window, watching the sky blaze pink and gold. For the first time in years, she wrote in her journal not about grief or regret, but about gratitude, for the wild, for the community, for the hard-won hope that sometimes letting go is the bravest thing you can do. Winter returned to Montana with a hush, coating the world in a familiar blanket of white. Anna's cabin sat quietly beneath heavy eaves, smoke curling from the chimney, the steady warmth inside a counterpoint to the cold that pressed in from every window. The world had moved on since Orion's rescue and release, but for Anna, the season brought a slowing down, a turning inward, a time to sift through memories and make sense of all that had happened. The table by the window was cluttered with traces of their journey. There were photos of Orion, one where he perched high in a pine tree, eyes bright and unbowed, another where he stretched, mid-leap, in his new enclosure. Next to the photos sat a battered stack of thank you notes from children, a rainbow of drawings, words tumbling in oversized letters. "Thank you for saving Orion. You're my hero. I want to protect wild things too." Atop the pile was Orion's old collar, battered and worn, a symbol of everything Anna had fought for and let go. Anna sat with her journal open, pen in hand, watching flakes drift lazily past the window. The silence was soothing, but not empty. It was full of questions, recollections, and the persistent ache of lessons learned too late, or just in time. She began to write, the words spilling out with surprising ease. This was never just about saving a bobcat, she wrote. Orion was a mirror, a way for me to look at myself, at my wounds, at all the wild hope I tried to bury after losing my son. Every moment with him, I was forced to choose: control or trust, protection or risk, holding on or letting go. She thought back to the blizzard, that desperate night on Eagle Pass. The memory of lifting Orion from the snow was no longer only a story of rescue, it was a moment of awakening. She saw now how much she needed something to fight for, how easily her old grief had slipped into the shape of new purpose. But what she'd learned, in the quiet and the chaos, was that love's deepest measure wasn't in how fiercely she protected Orion, but in how bravely she let him go. Being a mother, a rescuer, a guide, it was never about erasing wildness in him or in myself. It was about giving it room to breathe, about standing at the edge and believing that sometimes the things we care for most aren't meant to stay, but to thrive apart from us, wild and whole. Anna ran her fingers over Orion's collar, tracing each scratch and dent. She remembered the ache in her chest the day she'd packed up his things for the last time, the ache of an empty house, but also of hope fulfilled. Orion's absence was a presence all its own, a reminder that her story, too, wasn't finished. The wounds she carried hadn't vanished, but something had changed. She no longer lived in the shadow of loss, but in the light of risk and possibility. She flipped through the stack of children's notes, smiling at their wonder, their eagerness. Some had written about their own pets, some about wild creatures they'd seen in the woods, some simply about wanting to help. The words gave Anna hope. Her own willingness to share her struggles, her failures, and her victories had started a ripple. The people of Bozeman had become more open, more compassionate. The town felt different now. Neighbors more likely to help a stranded animal, children more curious about the wild, city leaders more willing to protect what made Montana unique. Anna's eyes drifted to the window, to the soft drift of snow against the glass. She thought of all the times she'd tried to control life's outcomes, to wall off pain, to shield herself from disappointment. But wildness, she realized, was a force that refused to be contained, in animals or people. It pulsed through every mistake, every moment of courage, every hope that refused to die. To truly heal, she'd had to embrace not just the possibility of joy, but the certainty of uncertainty. In her journal, Anna wrote, "The hardest lesson is that love isn't about possession, or even about rescue. It's about empowerment, the willingness to let another being become themselves, even if it means they walk away." Orion taught me that letting go isn't the end of love, but the purest proof of it. She spent the afternoon writing, letting the lessons of the past year settle deep. The difference between saving and controlling. The power of vulnerability. How, by sharing her story and accepting help, she'd found not weakness, but connection. Anna saw clearly that the community's growth had mirrored her own. As she let others in, the town itself had opened up, becoming stronger and more compassionate. Night fell gently, the world outside fading to a soft gray. Anna lit a single lamp and looked around her quiet home. The table, once a place of loneliness, now felt like an altar, covered in memory, in gratitude, in living proof that loss could be transformed by risk and hope. For the first time in years, Anna felt whole, not because she'd conquered her pain, but because she'd welcomed it as part of her wildness, part of the story she now shared. She saw her life not as a series of endings, but as a testament to what could happen when you dared to love, to risk, and when the time came. to let go. As the fire crackled low and the snow continued to fall, Anna closed her journal and pressed her hand gently to Orion's collar. She whispered, "Thank you, my wild heart. Thank you for teaching me how to live again." The world had shifted once more by the time spring arrived in Montana. Where winter had pressed the mountains silent and still, now the land stirred with new color and sound. Tiny shoots pushing through last year's dead grass, birds trilling from thawing branches, children's laughter carrying on the breeze from the edge of the Bozeman Wildlife Center. Anna could feel it too, a softening, a loosening in her chest that she hadn't known in years. The ache of loss was still there, but alongside it ran a deeper current: acceptance, gratitude, even joy. On the day of the center's annual spring festival, Anna arrived early, parking under a blooming cottonwood. She carried a canvas bag full of Orion's old toys, a stack of handwritten thank you notes from local kids, and the battered journal that had become her anchor through the wild months before. The air hummed with energy, families unpacking picnic baskets, booths being set up for wildlife education, the smell of grilled burgers mixing with the tang of fresh grass. At the far end of the field, Orion's enclosure loomed large and wild beneath the new green leaves. Sunlight flickered through the branches, dappling the ground in gold. Orion himself, bigger now, stronger, unmistakably wild, was stretched across a thick branch, tail twitching, watching the festival unfold with an air of distant royalty. Anna's breath caught when she saw him, pride and longing wrestling in her chest, but she also smiled. He belonged here now, in a space that celebrated everything untamed and true. Soon, people began to gather for the keynote talk. Dr. Gomez, the center's director, took the stage and introduced Anna with warm words. A woman whose courage and stubborn hope gave one of Montana's wildest hearts a second chance. Please welcome Anna Reynolds. Anna stepped forward, heart pounding, feeling a familiar tremor of nerves, yet beneath it, a quiet resolve. She had learned to speak not just about Orion, but about the deeper lessons his journey had offered her. And now the crowd looked at her not just with curiosity, but with real trust. Anna began simply, her voice clear but gentle. I want to talk about letting go, about what it means, and why it matters. She told Orion's story in full, from the storm on Eagle Pass to the harrowing weeks of wild training, to the moment he disappeared into the blizzard and proved he could survive alone. She shared her own story too, her grief for her son, the long seasons spent hiding from pain, and how, in rescuing Orion, she found a way back to hope. She let the silence settle, letting her words land. Then Anna spoke from the heart, giving the crowd the real lesson she'd fought so hard to learn. Love that truly heals isn't about ownership or control. It's about stewardship, about giving respect, even when it hurts, about letting another being become fully themselves, even if it means you lose the closeness you wanted. And that's not just true for animals. It's true for all of us. She paused, watching a family in the front row, parents holding a small girl between them, her hair in braids, wide eyes fixed on Anna. We all have wildness in us, parts that are broken or untamed, hopes that seem impossible to hold. We all want to save the things we love. But sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is let go, and trust that what we've given will be enough. Anna glanced over at Orion's enclosure. He watched her from his branch, the sun lighting his fur in fiery streaks. Orion is alive today because people believed in a second chance, because we risked together and learned to respect his wildness rather than erase it. I hope you'll remember that. When you see something wild, when you face your own hurts, when you wonder if it's worth risking your heart again. The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then applause rolled across the field, warm and honest. Dr. Gomez thanked Anna and presented her with a framed photo of Orion, leaping high among the trees, a testament to all they'd achieved together. Then, as the children's programs began, a young boy in a wheelchair wheeled himself over to Anna, holding out a crumpled drawing. "Miss Anna, I want to be a protector of wild things too, just like you." Anna knelt to his level, feeling the old ache of loss melt into a new, fierce hope. "You already are," she said, pressing his drawing to her heart. "Every time you care, every time you let something go free, you're part of that story." She wandered the festival afterward, sharing stories with families, laughing with neighbors, offering advice to anyone who asked. Everywhere she went, she saw the impact Orion had made. Kids wearing Team Wild buttons, teens signing up for trail cleanups, parents talking about backyard sanctuaries and coexisting with wildlife. Anna realized that what had begun as a lonely rescue had become something much bigger, a community awakening to the beauty and necessity of wildness, in nature and in themselves. As afternoon faded into golden evening, Anna found herself alone for a moment by Orion's enclosure. She watched him leap effortlessly from branch to branch, utterly himself, majestic, untamed, and free. She felt tears sting her eyes, not of sorrow, but of awe and gratitude. She spoke quietly, words meant for him, for her son, for anyone who needed to hear them. If you've ever loved and lost, or risked your heart for something wild, remember, freedom, trust, and respect are the gifts that endure. Don't be afraid to care. Don't be afraid to let go. And keep believing in the healing power of a second chance. As the sun slipped behind the mountains, Anna walked back across the field, the sounds of laughter and birdsong rising around her. She knew the story would continue. New rescues, new risks, new chances to love and let go. And for the first time in a long, long while, she felt at peace. Not because she'd conquered her wildness, but because she'd learned to embrace it, in herself and in every living thing.